I'm pleased and really excited to introduce our next keynote address. There's been a lot of discussion about the need for mental and health wellness supports in the search and recovery of missing children and unmarked graves. It is now my pleasure, if you all can welcome her, to Dr. Cornelia Wieman, who is the Deputy Chief Medical Officer with the First Nations Health Authority in British Columbia, who will speak about practicing trauma-informed mental health and wellness. So can you please welcome Dr. Wieman. I hope I got your name right.
Bonjour, Annie. Yeah, you did get my name right for the most part. Only my mom called me Cornelia when I was very bad. So you can call me Nell or Dr. Nell. I think my slides are coming up. Yeah, great. So I first want to start by, first of all, thanking the organizers for having me here. And also want to extend my appreciation and thanks to the elders who have opened, who opened last night, who performed the ceremonies this morning, and thank them for their guidance and for their teachings. And also thank you to the survivors who are here. I can feel the strength in the room. There's something that happens when we all gather together in one place. And so I'm just going to do kind of a complicated territorial acknowledgement. So I just want to acknowledge that I am here on Treaty 1 territory that is home to many First Nations and is home to the Métis Nation and also Inuit peoples. And acknowledge that I myself in my daily life live, work, and play on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. But my story is a little bit more complicated than that. I am as well a 60 Scoop survivor. I am originally from Little Grand Rapids First Nation here in Manitoba, part of the Anishinaabe Nation. My parents were Charlie Green and Mary Ann Duck, and my paternal grandparents were Charles Green and Mary Jane Keeper. So if I have any cousins in the audience, come up and say hi afterwards. It would be great to meet you. And I will also say how much I loved the survivors sharing this morning, and particularly Dr. Brown, in that I don't have the most inspiring story on becoming the first female Indigenous psychiatrist in Canada or even going to medical school. It's really one of spite and revenge because I was told that I would never be good enough or I wouldn't be good enough to be a doctor. So I went ahead and said, you know, I'll show you. And so here I am 30 years later. Spent about 30 years now working in Indigenous health, both in clinical practice and also doing different activities, including research, and most recently working at First Nations Health Authority in British Columbia over the last 5 years. And I think it was mentioned that I currently serve as the Deputy Chief Medical Officer there. And so that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I guess I'll get going on my presentation. Now, I can't see my slides, so this is going to make it a little bit challenging. I think this was meant, probably I should have showed you this slide while I was telling you a little bit about myself. But I think one of the things that we have to remember, and will be one of the points in my presentation that runs a thread all the way through, is that even if one works in a helping profession or a health and wellness profession, whether you are a mental health counselor, a wellness worker, whether you are a nurse, a social worker, a counselor, a physician. For many of us who are, in my case, First Nations, and being a 60 Scoop survivor, I have my own stories of challenges that I've had in my life. So I think it's important to remember, I think the message has already been passed along, is that it's important for us to look after ourselves at the same time. And so I'm just gonna get some water. It's really hard to open. There you go. I'm weak. Thank you. So I'll just advance to the next. No, it's not working. Okay. So as has been mentioned, this has all started, more talk and public perception around the unmarked graves started back with the announcement and discovery of unmarked graves at the former site of what was known as the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And since that time, as was mentioned yesterday and by the Honorable Murray Sinclair, that this discourse, these discoveries will continue to happen for quite a while to come, and this work has become underway. So what I want to do now is just spend a few minutes talking about what some of the potential impacts are, and really some of these slides are really meant to be food for thought and for discussion as your work moves forward. And so, of course, everybody knows, everybody here not just knows, but has experienced these feelings in relationship to what has happened with the unmarked burials. So there's grief and a flooding of intense emotions, and that can run the whole spectrum from feeling loss and grief, feeling shock, feeling profound sadness, agitation, guilt, shame, depression, hopelessness, etc. And so one of the things that we are talking about and that we want to help people with is to ensure that that trauma is dealt with, that at least people start to heal from that trauma and the intense feelings that people are experiencing. I know from the work that I used to do, and last night I had, it was so much fun to sit with the table of some people from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. That's where I started my work when I first became a psychiatrist. And I worked with a lot of people that had very complex forms of trauma at that time. And of course, all of these things that have happened just compound all of that trauma that people experience. So, and I will also say that, in my work currently in British Columbia, one of the things that has been very challenging has been the number of different types of trauma that have been going on, not just historically or intergenerationally for people, but even over the last few years. Think of everything that we have gone through, both as individuals, as families, as communities, as nations. Out on the West Coast where I work, we haven't just had, the COVID pandemic. We have what's called the opioid crisis, or the toxic drug poisoning crisis, where we lose, on average, just over 6 people a day die of a toxic drug death. We have, last year we had, or the summer of 2021, we had an incredible heat dome that caused over 600 deaths. We had wildfires, of course. We had what they call atmospheric rivers in the fall, or these intense rainstorms that caused landslides and flooding. First Nations lost land, lost access to the land. It was just literally washed away. And then on top of this was the trauma related to the unmarked graves. So that's okay. So there's a lot that's been going on. And so one of the things that I want people to think about is what's called disenfranchised grief. And that is grief that is considered a little bit out of what people would normally think about grief. Normally, people think about grief as being, simply in response to a loss, like a death of a loved one, for example. But we see different kinds of grief. For example, I just mentioned, First Nations losing whole parts of their actual land that was washed away in the floods, or mourning a missing child for decades. It's a little bit sort of out of what people would normally imagine of, oh, you're grieving somebody who died last week. And that makes it hard for people to talk about their grief. It makes it hard for people to define what it is that they feel or they want to work on. I'm not going to necessarily read every single bullet point on these slides. In fact, I have provided a copy of my presentation. If anybody wants a copy, it can be emailed to you. But these symptoms may be more intense, in fact, because there are fewer supports available. So, for example, before the announcement that came about Kamloops, this, as was mentioned, this was the unmarked graves and missing children were mentioned in Volume 4 of the TRC final report, but there wasn't a lot of discussion kind of out in the public realm. And so people necessarily might, what they call, stuff their feelings down. And then when you do that, that causes some challenges later. There is also vicarious trauma. And I think, again, the Honorable Murray Sinclair did talk about this a little bit in his own experience, and that it can affect many different community members, family members, and those who try to be helpers. I know for myself, when I have done, having worked for the last number of decades clinically, as a psychiatrist, psychiatry isn't necessarily a happy profession in the sense that, I'm not delivering healthy babies and the families are happy. People tended not to come to see me. People tended to come to see me when they were having the worst times of their life. And hearing stories like that day in, day out can be very difficult for people, and especially when quite serious things happen. And it's something to really be mindful about and to seek out support for if you're experiencing vicarious trauma. So everybody, responds to it in different ways. And again, it's almost like the spectrum of when people are experiencing grief and loss. People can feel very stressed out. Their emotions can come out physically and affect their immune system. They can need, but maybe perhaps have difficult accessing mental health supports. They might turn to using substances or some other activity as a coping mechanism. And essentially, people use substances when they want to change how they feel. And it can become problematic, of course, with certain substances, with almost any substance. For myself, like in the morning, I wake up and I wouldn't say I'm grumpy, but I need to wake up. And I use coffee, caffeine. Caffeine is a substance that I use to change how I feel. I no longer drink alcohol. I haven't had alcohol for almost 8 years now. But I used to use it as a way to change how I felt. I used to feel anxious and stressed and having trouble sleeping. So I thought, I'll have a couple glasses of wine. That will change how I feel. It will relax me. And so those of us who work in this area who may be experiencing vicarious trauma need to be mindful about what we're doing in order to cope with the feelings that we're experiencing. Oops. And so I just put this slide in, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but to explain, this slide explains a little bit about the difference between post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm sure many people know, originated actually, it was first, described as a syndrome or a disorder in respect to veterans returning from World War I, actually. It was called shell shock. And then we learned more about post-traumatic stress, the kinds of feelings and symptoms and behaviors that people who have been traumatized, and it became known as post-traumatic stress disorder. And then we noticed that not just veterans experience post-traumatic stress disorder, but people who felt at any time that their life was at risk or was in danger, or were living in chronic long-term situations where they were not safe. So example, the students attending residential schools. When people have complex post-traumatic syndrome, it means that, stress disorder, it means that there is a little bit more going on. It's been there for longer. In my experience, often when I saw patients, the people who had the most complex forms of PTSD almost met every criteria that we have for almost any diagnosable disorder. So they had symptoms of depression, they had symptoms of anxiety, they had symptoms of post-traumatic stress like flashbacks or nightmares, and they also had symptoms of what psychiatry calls personality disorders, which really is a way that people use to cope with their world. And so it makes it very complicated because Western medicine likes to classify everything very neatly and put people into categories, but that doesn't capture people's real lives. And so understanding it as complex post-traumatic stress in these situations, I think provides, most of the time when I would explain it to people that I saw, it helped them understand where they were at, and it made it possible for them to identify a couple of places where they would like to see change, and we would work on those things together. That's okay, thanks. So these are some of the tools, and I think the best tool I have to offer is coming up, but these are really helpful. What is helping? So, it's been mentioned already at this gathering that, we are inherently resilient. When we talk about our challenges, we cannot forget also about our resilience and being able to tap into that and support each other in this work. So some of the things that allow for open and collective expression and healing from grief are things such as cultural gatherings, healing ceremonies, collective support responses for grief that begin to identify that grief that people are feeling that maybe they haven't had acknowledged previously or in the past. But most of all, it's important for people to be able to choose, to have it under their own power, have it under their own agency when they want to come forward and tell their story, and learn more about themselves. And as was mentioned just before I came up to start speaking, that people, if they want to share some of their story, that's available to them at this gathering. So the other one is to encourage truth-telling without re-traumatizing by creating safety, having things present such as wraparound supports, culture and mental health supports, and supports not just during the event but after. And so one of, the best example is this gathering that we've been at for the last day and a half. There are mental health and wellness supports available to us. Even this morning, before I came up to give my talk, I was able to smudge. There are supports available if people need to step away from this room and gather some time to themselves. The other thing that we have been told at First Nations Health Authority is that culture, ceremony, traditional ways are very important, and that truth in its fullest extent must happen before reconciliation. I included this picture. This is from an old public health campaign that we had a couple of years ago at FNHA, and I love that banner. It was just what we were talking about, strength and resilience, in addition to people, feeling, having challenging feelings, but that my strength is who I am. My strength for me is as a First Nations woman, even though I am a 60 scoop survivor. And what more is needed? So there are compound impacts for traditional healers and knowledge keepers. So for example, we need to keep in mind that some of the people who are our traditional healers or our elders have also gone through these experiences themselves. They may be residential school survivors, they may be 60 scoop survivors, and that the needs are high, but the number of healers or helping people is limited. Elders, of course, are in a range of ages, but we have to do everything we can to protect our elders. And that allowing for opportunities for mentoring and for building capacity in our communities. And establishing balance between traditional healers, knowledge keepers, and mental health clinicians. And one of the ways we try to explain how that can work is by using that concept of two-eyed seeing. And that's the diagram on the right-hand side, where you can appreciate and value Indigenous knowledge and ways of learning and being, and appreciate and value what Western medicine can offer you. And then you can achieve better health and wellness, not just for individuals, but for families and communities. And right from the get-go, when I started working as a psychiatrist way back in the late 1990s, when I was working at Six Nations, we didn't have elders working in our clinic back then, but we had access to traditional healers and elders. And sometimes because of the damage and the disconnection from culture and healing, traditional healing, because of things like residential schools, 60 scoop, people didn't know who to go and seek help from. And so people would come to see me because they'd heard, that Dr. Nell, she's not that bad. She's pretty friendly. And they'd come to see me and they'd go, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I don't actually really want to see you. I want to see a traditional healer. And we'd be like, okay, cool, no problem. We'll help, we'll help with that. And so that's the way that it needs to be, right? We need to work with both systems if that's what people want. And lastly, this is the framework that I want to leave you with, and I think it's a little bit light in color, and I hope that you can see it, but you can also have a copy of my slide. But this is a 6 guiding principles for a trauma-informed approach, and it comes from the States when they were working on their COVID response and in response to public health emergencies. But I would argue that this is very relevant for the situation around unmarked burials and the grief and trauma and distress that, in my opinion, is a public health emergency. We need to deal with this as we go through this. And so the 6 principles, I'll just read them if you can't see, the printing is kind of small on the slides, is establishing safety, achieving trustworthiness and transparency, so that by coming here that you will be supported, that you will be guided and helped through being here, and that if you are having trouble, that supports are available. Having peer support, collaboration, and mutuality. So people aren't coming here saying, tell us your stories, and like in the past, tell us your stories, we'll gather them, we'll take them away, and you'll never hear from them again. This is a partnership that you're engaged in, and it's a partnership both at the level of these national gatherings, but also at the level of each of your communities. Empowerment, voice, and choice. this is really important for people, as I've mentioned. It's important for people to say, oh, I'm okay, I want to talk about this for a little bit, and then to go, okay, whoa, I need to stop for now. And I'm going to leave this for a minute. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to come back then a different time and tell you more. It's important to recognize and empower that person. And finally, having access to cultural, holistic, historical, and gender issues. So being aware of intersectionality and being respectful of that. So I'm sorry about the brouhaha at the beginning, but I want to leave you with a couple of quotes, and then maybe we can have some discussion. So one of my favorite authors is Richard Wagamese, whose sunset a couple of years ago. But I read a lot of his, I've read some books and some of his quotations, and I think these are really relevant for us now. I've been considering the phrase, all my relations, for some time now. It's hugely important. It's our saving grace in the end. It points to the truth that we are related. We are all connected. We all belong to each other. The most important word is all. Not just those who look like me, sing like me, dance like me, speak like me, pray like me, or behave like me. All my relations. And I think everyone who is here and the family and our community members who are still at home, we are all part of this, and we are going through this together, and we will get through this together. And finally, my acknowledgement to those who have lost somebody. I understood then that when you miss a thing, it leaves a hole that only the thing you miss can fill. Jay Miigwech.
Thank you, Dr. Nell. And a fellow 60 Scoop survivor. Thank you for doing the work, and thank you for your presentation. We're now at a point where we're going to be inviting attendees to ask any questions or share.
Hi, I'm really enjoying the sessions. Hi, I'm from Nunavut. And of course, everything is very expensive, and our elders do so much for us. And the government is always saying, it's too expensive, or otherwise our elders need a degree, a piece of paper saying, yes, you can hold sessions or do your healing sessions with your people. But the government says, no, you need a paper, a degree. So our elders were turned away, that we're trying to help our youth and those survivors and those that are hurting, and the government is turning them away. Why do they need that piece of paper? Elders are elders. And we keep getting that excuse, oh, it's too expensive to fly you here and there. So here, a lot of survivors through the residential school support program is being sent to Yellowknife and I don't know where else in the Yukon Territory, NWT, but in Nunavut, we have no place, nowhere to go except to Yellowknife, to a non-Indigenous doctor, because we're not allowed to be with our elders. And I'd rather see our elders doing healing sessions also, healing programs, along with us with our assistants. Of course, we'll be right there beside them, helping them. But we'd like to see more Indigenous elders doing the healing sessions and healing programs, but the government says no. and the government has all the money. We don't, as Inuit. Our elders got no money. The government has all the money. Give us that money and give it to the elders that are trying to do the healing while they're still alive. That's what I'm going through right now.
Thank you for sharing. Are there any other additional thoughts in that line? I believe that there are many communities that are dealing with that within their communities. Are there any other? Right in the front here. There's a microphone just over on the right in the middle. If you'd like to take the mic, please share.
I just want to share with you that I really appreciate everything that you've put up there. And I'm a psychiatric nurse, and I also work in criminology. So my career is almost 40 years. And when you talk about precarious trauma, at the age of 30, I felt that, you know, and the people that I was helping, and in one in particular, you know, it was a young man, and he was very ill. And once in a while, he'd go into a rage. He didn't talk to anyone. But I sat and talked with, I just sat with him, basically. And then he'd play crib with, you know, he'd teach me how to count the crib. And it led to a conversation which was one-sided. It was him talking, and he told me, there's a dark angel trying to make me into a woman. And that's when I realized, you know, somebody hurt him as a little boy. And I know that our men need that healing, and it is a much bigger picture. And the criminology part makes me really sad that our men and women are in the justice system for things that they do, and they're not responsible. That's what we call the intergenerational. But it was at that time I had the fortune of meeting Dr. Morris L.B. Oates, and he put together all that information. The information that, you know, our governments are still an extension of the government, the importance of knowing our history of the colonial process. And the thing that we worked with was, you know, 18 of us volunteered, and although I was a psych nurse, I took that training. 18 of us went through our own work, our own personal work, because you can't be a healer if you're hurting. And that's how we began. No money, volunteers. We had our elder, Joanne Peters. Both of them have left on their journey, but they instilled in me to see the bigger picture. And that was almost 40 years ago, you know, as a young psych nurse, I learned that. And when I listened to your presentation, this is what I've always believed in, you know, for us to take the best of both worlds and make it work, and to live this long, and to see a gathering like this, and so many things happening. I may not live to see the day when our people don't fill the prisons. My career has taken me to work with young people that are locked up, women that are locked up. I've worked in this penitentiary system. I've worked on the streets with street people. My career opened the doors for me to be present with people in their darkest moments. But it also gave me the opportunity to see them walk out whatever institution feeling a bit lighter, and meeting them on the street, and for them to say it made a difference having a nurse that listened. And I just want to say thank you, because it has been a long, long fight. And I do strongly believe, with this TRC, that we all got to work together, and we are all related. And I'm sorry I missed yesterday, but I wasn't feeling well, but I'm glad I came today.
Did you want to respond?
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really important. You made so many good points around why people are in the situations that they're in. You know, it's not just a sheet of paper with a list of charges, for example, and people who are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, but it's the why and their lives. And I think one of the reasons why I chose psychiatry in the first place to specialize in, because it was about stories. It was about listening to people's stories and making the time and the space for people to be able to share their stories instead of, you know, rushing. I was never the kind of doctor, and I never understood doctors who worked like that, who would only spend, say, 10 minutes meeting somebody for the first time and being able to think at least that they understood who that person was after only 10 minutes. So I spent a lot of time listening, and by doing that, you learn about people's experiences and what they've been through and some of the things they've endured but survived. And I think that's, you know, and then being able to work with them on choosing things that they would like to work on. It was very gratifying work. So thank you for your work and for offering your thoughts.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize mic number 2, and then I'll recognize mic number 3. So please, sir, go ahead.
Bonjour. My name is Colin Musso. I'm a Ojibwe Dakota descent. Yeah, there's a lot we can do, and we have been doing it. We don't need a degree. I know this very well. Our grandparents and great-grandparents, those were our deans. Those were our health professionals. I know this. I lived it. And I continue to live it. We don't need a degree. We know what the medicines do, their properties, and how they work within the properties of our body. In saying that, so there should be no question about funding. We know what we're doing. A lot of us folks here, a lot of pipe carriers, lodge people. This is not new to us. We've been doing it for a long time. I know I have been, actually all my life. I just came back from Toronto. I just came last night. I've been working at a place for over 15 years over there and across this country and countries. And we work hand in hand as best as we can with the health professionals, general practitioners, dentistry, chiropractic, RNs, teams. And we work good together. More can be done in this way. I don't know what the feds are waiting for. We don't have to prove anything to the feds. We have been doing this work. Our grandparents have been doing this work for a long, long, long time. People ask why. Well, come on. Look what has happened here. It's no secret. We all know what happened here. And we'll continue to heal as long as it takes. Through our lodges, through our medicines, one-on-ones, as best as we can, through education and health. I share with you, I worked here in education for about 14 years and developed programs. What did the government do? They cut it because we were succeeding. every year we would have 30 graduates or 40. And then they cut that program, what we were doing. There's a lot of us in this community in Winnipeg and across the country that are doing it in prisons, in schools, in health, in all places. We know that that funding is widely available. So why are they dragging their feet? There's trillions of dollars there in that fund. And a lot of our rights have never been honored, which is the Queen's bargain, if you know what I'm talking about. It's there, and it's widely available. We can do this, and we have been doing it. Yes, we do need the funding. Yes, we do need all of these things in place all across the country. We know the truth. We've always known. But to work hand in hand with whoever it may be, government, health professionals, educational professionals, that's reconciliation, because we know the truth. We know what our leadership is about. And we could sit down and talk with our leadership, but there's that so-called leadership over there that don't listen a lot of the times, what we have to offer. I'd just like to say by closing, to recognize all the elders here, all the women and men. We've all been affected. Even non-First Nation have been affected in this country. Right when the first government was formed in Quebec City. I'd just like to say a few words in one of our beautiful languages. Not my language, it's our language, if I can. Ani mishum saka no koi na kan soka na ka gijema ni to. Skuwe abi mamu bihato ngwakina. Pijoni mishnam. Nagajishinam, nanandeshinam. Amigwech.
Miigwech, thank you, sir. Thank you for your words. We have time for 4 more speakers. And I'll recognize the 2 over here and then the 2 over at mic 1. So can we start off with mic 3, please? Go ahead, sir.
Cross Lake. My name is Jackson Osborne from Cross Lake, Manitoba, Pimmichikamak. We're here to share our story. Your presentation was good there, the last presentation, that was awesome, about a burial site, what you go through. If I'm not going to get yatsak, but we tell it, I greet all the elders here today, my friends. We brought some of our family to share our story. We'll tell some more tomorrow at 2 o'clock, 2:30. I brought 3 sisters and 2 cousins and my brother. We're going to tell our story tomorrow about our 3 aunties that never made it home. After 70 years, we found a burial site. We'll share our story tomorrow. That's why we are here today. On Saturday, we went to Selkirk, me and my cousin. That's where our 2 of our aunties are buried. Not even a marker. We'll share this tomorrow. Reconciliation, there's more to reconciliation. I don't know where that word came from. We, in Inuit Aboriginal people, know what we want. We know our feelings. The Canadian people, they have their own feelings too. but we have to live as one. We have to love one another. You know, today as I stand here, it's over 1 year and 4 or 5 months. I haven't received my day's full compensation yet. That's what the government does to us. They don't know us. They just give us the money. Here, there's some money for across Canada. It's a small bone. We're all in First Nation will fight over that small bone. But money's not an issue. To me, the apology is not good enough for me as an elder. It's not good enough. They got to say more. They got to tell us this is their land. To say it inside Parliament. They said to us we stole their land in Parliament to make law legislation. To say inside the Parliament we murdered your children. That's what I want to hear. Reconciliation is not good enough. It hurts everybody. And last, you know, my first great-grandpa, his name was James Whiskey. He was born in 1894, coming from a trap line, a young man, 20 years old, a hunter and a trapper. He heard about a war, First World War, and curiosity. They went to Norrie House and checked what's going on. And there, they were taking names for young men who will fight a war, and he signed up. There's no mention in that document, to be honest with English, well, he's a Cree person from Cross Lake, my late granny, cousin or nephew. But this young man, my great-great-grandpa, I'm still looking for his picture, what he looks like. He's buried somewhere in France. And my 3 aunties, after 70 years, they're buried here somewhere in Manitoba. They're all related, my first grandpa and my aunties. But a document, it says, this trapper, this Cree Indian from Cross Lake, he signed a document that says, to defend the Queen and the King and the crown. Think about that. That was it.
Miigwech. Okay. Microphone number 1. Please go ahead.
Hello. My name is Tracy, and I just want to say thank you for your presentation. First and foremost, I'm originally from the White Bear First Nation where my mother was born and married into another, so I don't really claim that second reserve as my homelands because I was married into it. They took me away from someplace and presented me someplace else. And as a woman, you know, a lot of these things affect us differently. So I love it when I see women out there and doing this work. But one of the things that I wanted to ask is, you know, right now, trauma-informed is a click word, and it's usually attached to us, and that does a lot of harm. So I want to know how we can get from being a click word to doing the real work, especially in the urban areas, because I work in inner city Edmonton. We work right downtown, and we meet a lot of displaced people, a lot of hurt people, but they're still my relatives. We all share the same jacket every day. You know, we wear our historical jackets. We don't get to take them off when we go home. We wear them. And some of this training that we're doing here and that we're listening to, we work with a lot of non-Indigenous people who want to be us. So not only do they want our ingenuity, you know, they want to be genuine in it. And I have an issue with that. So I'd like to know how we can get people trained to understand You know, what is real trauma informed for us? And not just this click word that everybody's getting money for, and that we can really start doing the work in the cities, because we have a lot of people who need our help, whether they left our own communities or another community. They're still our relatives. So I'd like to know how we can transform that conversation from trauma informed of please and thank yous to what we represent ourselves as Indigenous people.
Great. Miigwech, thank you for that question. The answer, of course, is really complicated, but I think I'll take a brief stab at it. I think moving it from kind of a catchphrase or a buzzword, whatever you want to call it, I think ultimately the challenge for those of us who work in health is, if we look at a particular group, a community, where I work at FNHA in the province of British Columbia, is our people's health and wellness actually improving? Are we seeing changes? Are we seeing improvements? Are we seeing people accessing services? Because one of the things about access to service is not just that there's a healthcare provider of some sort in a community, it's do people choose to come forward and seek those services? A lot of the times people don't come forward and seek services because out of a fear of how they're going to be treated, either in a racist manner, discriminatory manner, a cruel manner. We've seen kind of the worst case scenarios play out, you know, in the media with the death of Joyce Echaquan and the death of Brian Sinclair here in Winnipeg. So we will know that our services are truly trauma-informed and culturally safe when people utilize those services and their health improves. And that includes you know, both Western medical and traditional healing, ceremony, culture as healing, together will result in improved health status. And I think one of the things I didn't have a chance to share with you today was the work that we are doing at First Nations Health Authority in terms of trying to improve the cultural safety and quality of BC's health system. Tomorrow is the second anniversary of the publication of the In Plain Sight report. Many of you might have heard of this report, and it's no new news to us. BC's healthcare system and healthcare systems across this country, racism is widespread within them. We know this. And so we have to do something to challenge that system. And yes, people use that phrase trauma-informed, and they even use the phrase cultural safety. But some of the things that we're trying to do in British Columbia is actually move that bar or improve the standard of quality of care. So we did publish within the last year, in June of this year, the BC Cultural Safety and Humility Standard. And while that at this point is an organizational or a reference standard, meaning it's something for health and social service organizations in BC to kind of aim toward, one of the things that we're working on is both getting that transformed in a way into a national standard, but also an accreditation standard. And what that means is that health and social service organizations, their ability to provide services and be accredited at a certain level is in jeopardy if they cannot show that they are attempting to meet the criteria in that standard. And there's a whole bunch of other work that it would take me too long to go into, but except to say that we have to make the health system more accountable. We have to improve the quality of service. We have to make it actively anti-racist. And we will know that we're providing trauma-informed care when we actually see people's health and wellness improve.
Thank you. Mic number 3, please.
Good morning. Duason negadakondi, Maxine Lecorne Suje, Jatikwe Gotse Ahante. I'm Maxine Lecorne. I am originally from Fort Providence, Northwest Territories. I work in Yellowknife. The community I'm from actually did their search in 1996 when I was only 11 years old. And my community has been heavily impacted through that and being the first community in the NWT where the residential school was first built. The church that was connected to the residential school is still standing to this day. And as an intergenerational, I totally see the impact of trauma. As myself, in my own healing journey, I was diagnosed at a young age with complex PTSD, what you're mentioning about. And at that time, they medicated me with medications to help with a lot of the symptoms that I was experiencing. But not knowing at the time that I still had to do my own healing with my trauma. And through an amazing elder, she mentioned to me, she's like, "You're doing too much of the white man way. You gotta go see, gotta connect to who you are." So through this long journey of my own healing, I am very glad that I'm not medicated anymore. I have amazing elders, and I also recognize the need of Western side and also the Indigenous side of our own healing. And as a support worker through the IRS RHSP program, I am a resolution health support worker up in the north, and I see a lot of clients and intergenerational and survivors not knowing the word trauma. And some of them shy from that word. They don't even want to go there because they know what it will bring up. So I have to find out a lot of education. I had to do a lot of educational talks to some of my clients about what trauma is and how it affects our body, our mind, our spirit, and all that entails with. And also, I also notice through some youth that I work with, they're being heavily medicated too, to deal with some of the symptoms, not knowing that they can turn to other venues of Indigenous healing and supports. So as my job as an intergenerational and a support worker, I always try to give the best information to my clients. And usually that gets on deaf ears to the medical team, especially doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, all these things. And it's just like they don't want to acknowledge that Indigenous part. That's the healing part. And up in the north, we send our clients to BC for trauma treatment programming. We don't even have an addictions or recovery program, anything in the north. We sent everybody down south. And that in itself is another trigger for our survivors and their families. And what I've come to work in the area I work with, I've noticed our communities are doing their own work and working with their own people as to on-the-land healing programming. And what I see in the work that I've done, I had to look into my own work and get my own training through different venues. Again, I had to travel down south for these training, like the trauma recovery certification course. I just recently did a grief and support certification course just to get more in depth of helping my fellow people up in the north. And my question is, when this comes to communities, especially up in the north, I would like to see more partnership and collaboration with governments, with the health team, Indigenous communities on giving the best of both worlds, of the Western side and the Indigenous side of healing. And what I came to realize in my own healing and working with clients that I work with is that they do better with their own people. Healing and like working with their own people who've been through that healing, who've been through that work, and how on the land healing programming is so crucial, and reclaiming what was lost to the residential school, and also looking at relearning and how to be a new person, because we come with different things growing up. You know, we have a lot of things to unlearn and heal from. And yeah, that's just what my thoughts were coming up when I saw the trauma part, and I was like, okay, that's a big topic, because like somebody mentioned about, you know, the hardest journey is from your head into your heart, right? And how can we balance that out to meet the needs of the families, the communities who are going to be greatly impacted, right? So that's all I want to say is masicho. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your words today. We have time for one more speaker, and I will recognize microphone number 1.
You actually have it backwards. This one's 3.
Oh, okay.
Puju, Wapshgabo Indigo, Bijun do Tem Jishniga Mendunjiba, Chimigwech, Atso Kano Manongum, Chimigwech, Otewega Napuagan, Chimigwech, Manitug Nagamon, Migwech for the prayers that helped us start in a good way. And I recognized Gitchi Anishinaabe among us here. My name is Standing White Bear. I come from the Lynx clan, and I'm from Wajishkanigan First Nation. My name is Will Landon. I hope I'm not remiss to you elders here for taking up a little bit of space, but I heard a call to ask for help and for resources that can help young people heal. I'm an intergenerational survivor. I'm joined here by my parents, who are both survivors of the residential school system. My mother, who went to St. Mary's in Kenora, my dad, who went to Cecilia Jeffrey, also located in Kenora. I also acknowledge them for allowing me to come to these types of things to continue my learning. I acknowledge my grandparents, my grandfather, who was a survivor, Doug Skeed, and my grandmother, Madeline Skeed. I just want to tell a little bit about myself before I offer what I know. Because I know when we were talking about, someone was mentioning that the paper, and we need to prove our credentials to know what we're talking about. I've been an advocate in Indigenous, I've been an Indigenous advocate since I was about 12 years old. I'm 29 now. So 17 years I've been involved in the political circles. I'm coming up on my 18th year. I have a degree in political studies, and just last month I won the Canadian Alliance on Mental Illness and Mental Health Champions of Mental Health Award for my individual contributions to mental health care in Canada. So one of the things that we talk about, and what I've heard repeated throughout this, the opening dinner and through the opening panel this morning, is that there's a lot of trauma involved when we're talking about the unearthing and finding out the truth of what happened to our people. I always talk about how I wish I could take the pain away from my parents of what they experienced. And I'm no stranger to trauma either, the stuff that I've seen in my life and the things that I've experienced. And I'm sure they wish they could take my pain away. But that healing that we need to do is almost like an individual type journey, and that everything that we need and the way that we mix different things helps us establish our own strong path, looking forward. And so I just wanted to mention that, as well as to why I'm so invested in this type of work for young people, because as we're moving forward, it's my generation that needs to really work hard to break the chains of colonization, the chains of residential school, 60 scoop, all those different types of things. And I do want to tell the young people in the room, I've recently just really, absolutely, I can say to myself, I've healed. I've let go of my traumas, and I've broken those chains. Those chains are a little bit more brittle than we think they are. Sometimes we give them a little bit too much more power than we think. So onto the resource that I want to share with you all. There are 4 things that got broken due to the residential school system. We got disconnected from our land, disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from our community and our relationships, and disconnected from our spirit. I recently, about a couple years back, I worked with Thunderbird Partnership Foundation to build with about 8 other youth to establish the Rebuilding Our Connections, a youth life promotion toolkit. And you can find this on the Wise Practices website of Thunderbird. What it is, it's a document that helps community workers, elders, leadership learn how to engage with young people so that they take ownership of their healing through a bunch of different kind of actions, such as reflecting on the strengths of your community. As we say, it's a strength-based approach. So you reflect on the strengths of your community and your nation, or if you're even in an urban center, what the strengths can be there. Because as we know, a lot of us and a lot of young people have a negative perception of the reserve. But to me, and I learned this quite a while ago, is the reserve is a beautiful place. It's where our sacred sites are. It's where our spirits are. A lot of the times it's where our nature is. And a lot of the times they're in the most beautiful places you could ever find in this country. We have to use that strength-based approach to start changing the perceptions of our young people so that they don't live a self-fulfilling prophecy of drugs, alcohol, violence, whatever. And that's what this toolkit is designed to do. It's to help them examine their strengths so that they can rebuild places where maybe they need to be strengthened. Maybe a place is really connected to their language and their spirituality and their land, but their interpersonal relationships within the community is very turbulent. It helps to use those strengths to reestablish a connection with the other. So I hope maybe some of you have written that down, but I'll repeat it again. Rebuilding Our Connections, a youth life promotion toolkit, found on the wisepractices.ca website under Thunderbird, and it's 100% free. Anybody can access it online. And there's also, if you contact Thunderbird, there's all of us that worked on it. We're always there to help guide you on how to properly use it and engage with the young people, to give you wise practices so that it's a youth-centered healing journey, but also that it's healing for the elders. To the young people that are in the audience, I feel like the best way we can help our elders heal, our survivors heal, is to live life with the intent to live instead of living the way that I used to live, with the intent to die. We have to live a good life, and I think when our elders see that, they'll see that their strength, that their experience, and that holding on was well worth it. So our best way to heal our entire communities, especially as young people, is to live a good life. And I want to give you that resource so that you can engage with your young people so they have the opportunity to live Mino Matsiwin. How miigwech.
Miigwech, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and the youth today. We have one more speaker at number 2, please.
Masi. My name is the man that calls a loon, and my GST name is Gerald Antoine. I am a Dene. I come from just about 14 hours north of Edmonton. What I wanted to share with you is that about doubt, about fear, and about trauma. And you may have seen me on TV. Just in the end of March, I was asked to be the lead for the AFN delegation. And when I was over there, on the day that we were going to do what we needed to do and say what we needed to say, I had this really migraine headache leading up to that day. And so that morning, after the pipe ceremony, the elder gestured to me, and so I went over there, and he looked at me in the eye, and he put his hand on me, and he says, "You're meant to be here." And so that migraine headache decreased, but I was still pounding like this. And so after we did what we needed to do and say what we needed to say, that migraine headache went away. When he did the ceremony with me about doubt, about that I was meant to be there, what lifted was my own personal doubt. Is that one of the things that I thought about all our people is that we do doubt ourselves because of the things that happen to us. And so when we shared and told the truth, your truth, that migraine headache went away, and what that was fear. Because of all this systematic genocidal process that we all endured, there's this implant of fear that is constant. And so when we told the truth for you, it just went away. The other third experience that I had is that I had pain where that migraine was. And it's still there today. It's not as much as it was. But what that is trauma. And so I'd like to thank our speaker for sharing and laying out what we all been experiencing in our own lives. And I'd like to thank the Thunderbird voice over here about how to get back to being who we are. You know, reconnecting with our spirit, reconnecting with our family, reconnecting back to our home, our homeland. This is our home. Mother Earth is our home. Well, this is what we have in common. And so when I got into this position, when I was parachuting into this position, I saw all around me the communities and all the home fires and what's going on. And each one of you have your own personal experience and knowledge about what that is. And when I got into this political arena and I saw the leadership, and when you look at this, what I see is there's two issues in front of all of us. One is about governance. And what that Thunderbird voice is saying, and what our elders are saying, is that we already have our governance. It's in our home. It's our family. It's our family leadership. The other issue is impositions. The things that have been imposed that uprooted our family, that displaced our family, and that relocated our family. That's what I saw there. What I see is that we're so busy getting the handouts of the impositions. And what our sister from the north was saying is that they're hanging on to all those things and preventing us from being who we are. So we need to get back to our spirit. This is who we are. And so the path forward is that we need to understand the doubt, the fear, and the trauma. And we need to help each other to recover, just like the unburial burials or unmarked burials. What is happening is that we're uncovering ourselves. And I'd like to thank our children for getting us together and putting that on the table, that we need to uncover ourselves. We need to restore who we are. We need to rebuild what is done to us. And we need to then protect those things. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I think it's really important with what the work that you're doing in your community, not only for yourself, but your family and your community, and also the responsibilities you hold. And so we need to help each other work together, and that's my message going to the Special Chiefs Assembly in Ottawa, because we need to really make sure that we really come together to do our work. Masi.
Thank you so much for that very important message. I'm just going to invite Stephanie up to the stage. This closes off this portion of our program, and I'd like to take this opportunity again to thank Dr. Wieman for her presentation. So let's give her a hand, a round of applause.